Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us in today's panel, The Price Organizations Pay When They Don't Have Confidence in Their Data. My name is Karen, and I'll be your host and moderator for today. Before we start the panel, we'll have some housekeeping items. You'll get the link to the panel recording via email after today's panel. Throughout the panel, you'll be on mute. And if you have any questions throughout the panel, please send them in the Q&A on the chat box below. And as you go through, there are some icons on your view where you can get access to the resources that we'll share today. Now let's go and introduce today's panelists. We have Charlie Wood, Brian Murphy, and Michael Nixon. Would you guys want to go through and introduce yourselves and provide some background?
Sure thing. So, well, first of all, thank you, Karen, and very much looking forward to speaking to everyone today. My name is Charlie Wood. I'm a Senior Research Manager at Vance & Bourne. So we're a market research agency focused primarily on the tech and IT sector. Quick background on me. I joined the company 2014, and my role basically involves everything from the very initial conversations around research with our partners and clients, all the way through to the sort of stuff that we're doing today. So the reporting and the analysis and that kind of thing. So, hello.
So hello, everybody. Thanks again, Karen. My name is Brian Murphy. I'm a Vice President of Data and Integration at Aramark. I have over 30 years in the data and integration space. A little background on what Aramark is, if you're not familiar. So Aramark's a global provider of food and uniform and facility services, and we operate in over 19 countries globally. And I'm going to walk you through some use cases on how we've applied some of the technology we're going to talk about today into how do we improve trust in the data.
Great. I'll go next. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. My name is Michael Nixon. I am the Vice President of Product Marketing at SnapLogic, and I've been with the company now for close to 11 months. And in my capacity, my role is to help bring our products and services and features to market, and of course, create messaging and communication that resonates with all of you, and also try to understand your respective environments, so therefore we can help deliver even better products in the future. So really happy to be here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that. Now, we would love to learn more about our audience. I would push a quick poll to learn more about what your roles are. So I'll give it about the next 30 seconds for everyone to complete the poll. The question is, what is your role? Select one. And there are a couple of multiple choices here. Select one, whether you're IT engineer, data engineer, or in the business function. Let's give it another 20 seconds.
It's great. I'm expecting we'll have a great lineup today. I bet we'll have a good mix of business and technical people. Great.
All right. Let me show the poll results now. All right. So we've got a good balance of technical and business audience, 22% from the IT management, about 30-40% from the business LOB management. And I'm curious to see those people who clicked on something else. So thank you for that. So now let's turn over to Charlie so he can go over the research overview and methodology. So over to you, Charlie.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, so before I dive in and actually start pulling out any data points, this kind of context is always really useful. So just a bit of a quick overview from my point of view. I'm going to be covering some Vance & Bourne research that we conducted last year in 2020. And this sort of topic that we're looking at today is effectively the second part of a two-part research series. So back end of last year, we covered why data warehouse projects fail, and then a kind of research piece around that. The stuff we're looking at today, much more aligned with kind of data trust, and there's some really interesting conversations that I think we're going to have over this session in relation to that. As far as the methodology is concerned, so who we actually spoke to for this research, we interviewed 500 IT decision makers, so within the US and the UK. And this is across a whole host of public and private sector organizations, all of which had 500 or more employees. So that's what the data points that we look at today are going to be in relation to. And yeah, before we get into some of the more nitty-gritty, just a couple of the kind of top findings that sort of summarize this research really nicely in the context of data trust. First one on the left-hand side there, we've got 82% of those that we surveyed, those ITDMs, who noted that they see data analytics as either as something that is very important within their organization and their IT strategy. And actually, in addition to that 82, we had a further 16% saying it was somewhat important. So, I mean, that's probably unlikely to be any major surprise to anyone on the session today. But I think it really just highlights straight off the bat how important data is to modern organizations and kind of what makes them tick. And yeah, what we're seeing there on the right-hand side is actually we've got 77% of those that we spoke to who do not have this complete trust in the quality of their organization's data for making really accurate and sort of timely business critical decisions. So I think immediately it kind of pinpoints a really big kind of lack of confidence around data, and something that's obviously a massive concern given the data on the left-hand side showing just how important data is. Now, among some of the top reasons that we're going to go into this in more detail, but some of the top reasons for that data distrust, we've got things such as disconnected data sources, integration issues, poorly structured data, poorly formatted data. I mean, a lot of those, I imagine some of the listeners on the call today are probably going to resonate with at least one or two of those issues in their own company. But yeah, that's just a couple of stats to really set the scene, I think, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail now around why some of these companies do have confidence issues within their data. So yeah, as I mentioned briefly on the last slide, a big part of this is to do with disconnected data, siloed data, and we're showing that on the left-hand side here. So the average respondent that we spoke to estimated that there were 115 distinct apps or data sources across their whole organization. Now that's something that probably, again, no surprise, as you'd expect, that really does skyrocket as we start looking at bigger organizations. I mean, you imagine some of the bigger organizations globally, they're going to have far more distinct sort of data sources than that. But I mean, across all of these data sources, the big problem that we're addressing here is that there just simply isn't enough kind of connectedness of those data sources. So you see there the 49%, that's the average figure, those saying that their data sources, they're not connected, they're not working seamlessly together. And again, that's just pointing towards a pretty big data disconnect in organizations, something that doesn't take a great deal of imagination to sort of consider how big a detrimental effect that's going to have on organizations and how well they can utilize their data. Pointing out the data on the right-hand side. So I mentioned on the last slide, there's these kind of trust issues and a lack of complete trust in data for the various use cases that you would want to use it for. Some of the most likely reasons for that distrust, the number one reasons on the screen here, I'm going to go through the top three. But we've got 53% saying it's to do with disconnected data sources. The second highest for that particular question, we had 40% pointing towards poor integration, meaning that data is either missing or maybe incomplete. And the third one that we found from that question, we have 31% of our respondents who pointed towards data just being maybe poorly structured or poorly formatted, But I mean, once you start considering one or two of those kind of issues in combination, I think it becomes pretty clear why organizations are having some of these issues, some of these data trust issues that we're talking about. And then, you know, as a result of that, some of these low confidence issues with their data.
Thanks, Charlie. So now we'd love to see what your top challenges are, you know, amongst the audience. So I'm going to push another poll question for you to answer. The question is, what is your top challenge with data and application integration today? Select only one. And the choices are too much data, so much wrangling, too many applications that slow down integrations, hard to use or too many integration tools, architecture complexity, high cost in maintenance, or something else. So I'll give it another 20 seconds for the audience to take the poll, and we'll provide the poll answers.
That's great. Can't wait to see the results. Charlie, so that was great information you shared. While the audience is answering, with the information you've shared so far, was there something in your mind that stood out as something you didn't expect out of the survey that you conducted?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, really. It's certainly something that we probably expected there to be an issue of this nature. I think, I mean, even within my company, there are certainly times where you want to find a certain data source, or you want two things to be just nice and neatly connected together. But it just, in reality, in a lot of instances, doesn't work that way. I mean, what perhaps was interesting, maybe a little bit surprising, was the extent to which some of these other organizations are seeing that too. I guess it's one of those where you kind of think it's maybe not so great for you, but then you don't realize that everyone else is experiencing some of these kind of similar issues in their own organizations. So the scale of those low confidence issues was maybe a little bit surprising.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Well,
let me show some of the answers. So, all right, the majority is there are too many applications and slow integration. So that's that aligns pretty well with Charlie's research in terms of, you know, companies having 115 on average, 115 applications within their organization. So now, Brian and Michael, what are your thoughts in terms of, you know, what Charlie has, shared with us, and also what the audience has shared with us as well?
Yeah, I feel okay.
Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right. So, yeah, I feel these results are in line with what we expected. And as Charlie, through his research, has demonstrated, the rise in the number of applications create a struggle. And we're seeing that our audience relates to that directly through this poll. Mm-hmm. Brian?
Yeah, and at Aramark, we've experienced the same challenges. So we're a very diversified company and provide services across different sectors. So we have a lot of different applications, and some of those applications have different levels of maturity. So the ability to connect those and provide the appropriate trust back to the business owners, so that way they know they're actually seeing the data that's being captured at the time of interactions is important.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, Brian, because we talked about this previously in terms of, you know, you talked about, in terms of data confidence. So, and how does that play with, you know, getting the right analytics, whether the data, whether it's, whether to trust the data or not, and how, so can you tell us more along the lines of, you know, how do you increase confidence in the data amongst the business groups?
Yeah, good question, Karen. In all honesty, at Aramark, confidence was low. And a lot of the reasons why confidence was low was awareness. So I think no matter what you do at your organization in order to improve data, it's really about how do you communicate back to your business community of what are the services that are available, how do you access it, tried to reduce the overall friction at getting that information. So much like other companies, I'm sure, we had a lot of different paths to access data. In some ways, data was used in multiple different ways. What we've done as over the last several years is go through an overall data transformation and to bring and start to bring the information together and harmonize it and treat more data as a service. In the past, data was perceived as more of a cost. And what we've been able to do over the years is actually transform the opinion of the business that data is more of an asset, and if it's used wisely, it can actually fuel the business and help them make better decisions.
Got it. And with to further improve that data, is there classifications of data in terms of operation data versus transactional? How would you surface that data to the business?
Yeah, actually, another good question. So yes, I think we've all suffered with the trying to be perfect. And I think you need to classify your data in various ways as far as confidence. For instance, near real-time data coming in, streaming in from various sources. That data is good. It may be great from an operational perspective to be able to make decisions throughout the day, especially as you're servicing customers or clients. But it may not be the same quality at the end of the day when end-of-day processes are being taken care of, credits, depending on the type of data you're looking at, the data usually gets better throughout the day or the next day based on other business processes. So by raising awareness and letting people making sure people understand the source of the data, the quality of the data, and how to use the data is definitely part of the journey.
Got it. And Michael, do you have a question?
Oh, no, I thought that was a good comment. I think it's a good segue into the next slide topic.
Great. Yeah. Over to you, Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does tie into this part that we're about to go on to really nicely. So, I mean, we've obviously addressed, there are this whole host of different issues around this. What we're looking at here is kind of opportunities and how we can kind of utilize tools to increase data trust and increase data confidence. One of the more obvious ones here, I think, is to do with automation. And so we've got a data point on the left here to kind of contextualize this a little bit. We found on average, it's estimated that 42% of the data management processes that could be automated in the organizations that we were interviewing are still being done manually, according to our respondents. I mean, all the while, organizations are still pretty heavily relying on these kind of manual processes around data. I think it's probably pretty likely that they're going to continue struggling with these trust issues and these confidence issues. And yeah, so it does point towards a pretty big opportunity for improvement here. I think something else to kind of throw in as further context there. Real world, I think data volume in most probably all organizations, that's going to be growing, and likewise data complexity, just the whole data landscape in general, it's going to be becoming more challenging. And so I think that point is that organizations need to get a hold on this as soon as they can, really. The more they can automate and the more they can sort of streamline those processes, the more they're going to, exactly to Brian's point, kind of see data as an asset and not something that hinders them or challenges them. Kind of tied into that, and another area that the research has kind of uncovered as a good area in which improvements could be made is just in general to do with integrating more of these data sources. So our findings showed a pretty clear link between the organizations that have more integrated data sources and the organizations that do have higher levels of data trust. So to put a couple of numbers to that, the respondents that we spoke to who were right in the sort of most positive bracket, so the ones saying, yeah, we completely trust our data for making accurate business decisions, these respondents were far more likely, 63% well, they indicated that 63% of their data sources are seamlessly integrated together. And that's a lot higher than the average that we saw across all of the organizations. Comparatively, those that either said that they've got pretty small levels of trust or no trust at all in their data, in those instances, they only had 39% of their data sources that they said were sort of integrated together nicely. So I mean, those data points are sort of indicative, but what they do present is this nice clear link between integration and levels of trust. And I think obviously if organizations were able to, well, I mean, in an ideal world, if they could integrate absolutely all of their data sources, all of their applications really nice and neat and seamlessly, you can imagine the kind of positive impact that would have on these organizations and kind of how well they can utilize their data and make it into that asset that it ought to be. I mean, as far as some of the benefits that you're likely to be seeing with something like that, you're going to have, generally speaking, greater confidence in the data. Your business operations are likely to be optimized or certainly closer to optimized. You're going to see increased confidence in, I don't know, data management as far as compliance with regulations, or even increased confidence as far as just the security of data, I think, as well. So you've got a pretty comprehensive list there of some of the benefits that you might be able to see upon being able to kind of integrate those data sources more effectively.
Thanks, Charlie. So one last poll we're interested in asking the audience to complete is looking forward. What's your vision, top priority of what's needed with your integration solution? Please select one. And some of the most choices include needs to be fast, needs to be intuitive and simple to use for all users, needs to be compatible with on-premises and cloud applications, more automation, more cost-effective and simple cost model, needs to integrate a variety of platforms, or something else. So let's give it another 20 seconds for the audience to complete.
This is a great question, Karen. Really anxious to see how the audience will respond to this and see what the key issues are.
I want to pick more than one.
Yeah, it would be great, wouldn't it? No, but we ask you to pick only one. So what's the most important one? Because we find out really what the pain is when you're asked to pick primarily one. If you had all of the above, everyone would pick all the above, right?
Yeah. All right, let me show the poll results for everyone. All right, so 30% of the audience selected simple to use, intuitive for all users. About 10%, more automation, as Charlie mentioned earlier. Needs to integrate a variety of platforms, operational and analytics. So I believe, Brian will talk a little bit more about, around that area later on. But yeah, this is great. Thank you. And let's turn it around and let's have, what are your thoughts, Brian and Michael, in terms of these, this results that the audience provided, and also Charlie's overview on needing more automation?
Yeah, I think this is great. Again, it's just yet another segue for what the next discussion will be, and Brian will lead that. I mean, the blending of operational data with analytic data, we're seeing that trend increasingly, and moving data or integrating data is not just about sending data to the data warehouse. So this reflects what we're seeing in the larger scope of things.
All right, thank you. So let's start off with Brian then. Over to you, Brian.
Okay. So just to give you a little bit more background around Aramark, if you're not familiar already. So Aramark currently, pre-COVID, we serve about 100 million sport fans annually. We operate in about 90% of the Fortune 500 companies and serve about 500 million meals annually to all the universities and K-12 institutions and globally. And then another interesting point is uniforms. We actually uniform over 2 million people every day. So if you think about that, Aramark has quite a bit of different data points. So they're not all coming in a single way, single pattern through single solution. So our challenges were different. And then how do we make that information available, operationalize it, provide it in the hands of the appropriate people in our business, and also back to the consumers, different creative ways on how we can provide the better experience to the consumer. Because especially now that we're in COVID, we basically need to be able to interact with the consumer the way the consumer wants to be reached out to and interact with us, so we can provide our services and in a variety of different ways. So before I switch, I actually voted for speed, and I'm surprised nobody went for speed, and for more connections. That's why I wanted to choose more than one. So I think the variety of different services is probably more important than speed, but being able to connect the things and not being able to provide that information in a timely manner to the right people, I think is really important.
Yeah, that was an interesting gap.
So just to give you a little background at Aramark, so you can see we're a very diversified company. We have a lot of different data paths, and we had very similar challenges. And I'm not going to make you believe that we've solved all these problems, but we're far along in our journey where we have basically started to provide our data from all our various systems and the applications that we integrate to, and we've adopted a process of data as a service. And I talk about communication and raising awareness back to the business. What we've done is we've branded our data access layer or our data service layer under a program we call Marco. And we were able to do that in a very quick way by leveraging the SnapLogic platform, by being able to connect to a variety of different sources, whether they were on-prem, in the cloud, or in somebody else's cloud, so we can operationalize the data, bring more data into our data warehouse, actually start creating a data lake, and then really build out on data into more of an AI platform. So I talked about data as an asset, and when you think about AI and automation, I mean, AI is becoming such a commodity, right? So really, that's just an engine, and you have to think about data as the oil to the engine. And without oil, the engine just fails; it just doesn't run. So you really have to think about data differently, and also represent that back to your business stakeholders, that the data is really the oil, or it can even be perceived as the fuel to all these various capabilities. And by us branding these capabilities under an umbrella called Marco, we don't get into the conversation around tools and technologies, because it's terrible when you're in front of business owners and they start talking about different technologies and so on. So now we've actually changed the conversation. So now we actually come in and we really talk about Marco, and then what can we connect and what are the services we can provide. So this slide really illustrates the various capabilities that we've been able to connect together. And I'm going to walk you through a few use cases. So one of the key things around the services that we've been able to provide is also raise communication and make people aware of it. And then also, like, I like to call myself a data geek. All right, so you have to expose this information to the data geeks or the geeks out there. And how can they access this information? How can they use it? So what you're seeing is a screenshot of our developers portal. So being able to have all this data available as a service and not being able to connect to it or know how to connect to it and what to do with it, you're not going to be successful. And we have a few, we have more than a few. We've had many examples of developers going up to our developer portal, registering for this, browsing around some of the services, and with little intervention from us or interaction with us, actually get to a point where they're ready to go live. And as a matter of fact, I had a university up in the Northeast basically told us that our data services that we provide for menu boards wasn't working. And it's because they went from development up to wanting to go live in production, and we just didn't give them access to that too. So I think the key things is, how do you expose the data? What is the data? How do you make it available for people to understand so it's not a long, drawn-out process? And then, one of the key points off of that that one conversation with one of our clients is also, how do you secure it? So how do you make sure that the right information is being delivered to the right individual or organization in a secure, and again, from a trust standpoint, it's not always about the quality of data. It's also, am I delivering the right information to the right group of people too?
Makes a lot of sense.
I'm sorry?
No, I was just saying that makes a lot of sense.
So to give you a few business outcomes, so when I think about capabilities and what we've done with it over the last 18 months, let's say, we have a few different outcomes. So when we talk about sales, so sales transparency to our operators. So if you've ever been to an Aramark facility, I always joke the person that's running around the most at one of our facilities is most likely the person running the organization. And that person does not have time to sit down in front of a computer and see how their operation's doing. They're making sure the client's happy, they're making sure the consumers are happy, making sure the employees are happy, food's being prepared, and we're able to service our customers. So what we did very quickly is give them real-time access into their transaction and sales information, and expose that through a mobile app that's on their phone, so they can actually see how their account's doing. They could see what the sales mix are, if there's going to be any outages, so that way they can actually react to any changes in the business throughout the day, and make the overall experience better. Then on the other side, we talk about operational transparency, and this stuff is not coming into a data warehouse. These applications are actually bridging applications. So we were able to take our food production management system and actually, in some cases, replace paper in some scenarios, and even eliminate manual temperature readings. So we have to take temperature readings on a regular basis, and we then have to take that paper and archive it. So what we've done is we operationalize that and build out applications, and then also allow our operators to record the temperatures, service results, so that way we can feed that data back into the engine, so we can do appropriate forecasting for the next time we serve that menu on a specific day. So that way, if we ran out of food, the next time we know that we need to serve more because it had a higher acceptability. Or let's say we didn't run out of food and there was a lot of waste. We're also recording that waste, so that way the next time we either don't serve that item, or we record what was going on in the environment. Could have been an event, could have been the weather. There's a lot of different factors that go into overall food production. So as we've started to take advantage of these capabilities and the data that we're getting, we're able to operationalize and help our operators be more effective and spend more time in front of our clients and make the clients happy. So especially now, I think this is a little bit more applicable. So as we start to change how we operate, and I think a lot of companies are going through this, is the consumer experience. If you've all gone out to a restaurant, everything now is contactless. So from menus to payment and even ordering. So, and what we've been doing is taking our capabilities and connecting those to a variety of different platforms, such as Alexa, being able to ask what's on the menu. Think about in a hospital where patients are in a hospital room, they may not be able to dial the phone. So we're actually we're actually rolling out the ability to ask Marco what's on the menu today and actually order. So that way they don't have to go through, the paper trail and so on, or somebody coming in and taking their order. We actually partnered with Apple early on, and instead of having an app, everybody has an app now. We saw that as more of 5 years ago, and we partner with Apple on how we could provide conversational ordering. So we were one of the first companies to introduce conversational ordering at one of our venues, and we branded it called Brew to You, where you could be at your seat, and so we knew where you were. You scanned the QR code on your seat and basically got into a conversation where then we gave you what was being offered, and you can actually order a beverage of choice, and then it was brought down to you. So again, the possibilities are limitless. It's just different ways of engaging with your employees or your consumers, and different types of channels that you can provide that. The other piece too is also how to capture preferences. So everybody today is looking for, I just don't want to know what's on your menu. I want to know what's good for me. And then the next time I come in, I don't want to go through the same set of questions. I want to be able to set up my dietary and my preferences or what I like to eat. So the next time you come into the experience, it's going to do suggestive orders. Or if you opt in, the ability for us to actually come back and make some suggestions, because we may be offering something that you said you liked the last time. Say, hey, on Friday is taco day, and we know that you like tacos, and we're having a special. So again, how do you improve upon the overall experience? And I think automation and data is the only way to power that. And then there's a lot of different vehicles, there's a lot of different platforms, but you need a decent integration capability and automation layer in order to bring all that together.
So actually, Brian, that if I may insert, there was a question that came in from Robert. Karen has already answered, but I wanted to expand on it. Robert's question was, what role does SnapLogic play in your Marco environment, essentially? He was asking if it was built on SnapLogic, but perhaps you can expand on Marco and the relationship with SnapLogic.
Yeah, so really what we've done is we've built out a microservices architecture, and I did it in a way where I leveraged SnapLogic as my implementation layer. So the microservices are connecting via SnapLogic to the various applications, and then we're exposing those as web service APIs, or we're doing more reactive type of integration patterns where data is streaming in and we're consuming the data, and then via webhooks. So SnapLogic was a way for me to take integration patterns that would normally take months or weeks into literally minutes. I mean, my boss would always like to say, minutes, but realistically, as you build out an integration, you want to go through the appropriate regression testing and so on. But we were able to build out various endpoints in a very quick period of time. And as we adopted this strategy and platform, we went from literally 0 endpoints to over 150 endpoints, and we're continuing to expand upon those capabilities as we go on.
Well, okay, thanks for elaborating.
Thanks. And as you guys have more questions, please add them to the Q&A chat box. We're perusing through them, between now and then. So please send in your questions. Now, before we answer them, I want to share with you some resources available for you to read on. So we have available 2 reports that Benson Bourne, Charlie, has gone through and researched and provided us. So it's the State of Data Management, the Impact of Data Distrust, and the State of Data Management, Why Data Warehouses Projects Fail. So you have the links here. You can also access it in the On24 platform as well. And if you like to try out SnapLogic, we also have a 3-day free trial for you to try. So let's go through the Q&A portion, and let me look at some of the questions coming in. Please do add questions you have. So there's another question that's coming in for you, Brian. Are you using any API gateway layer in the architecture?
Yeah, early on we were, yes. So we're using Google's Apogee. That was the, arguably is one of the primary or the leading API gateways from a mediation services. We are looking at SnapLogic's capability because I think within the last 12 months that's been introduced. But the benefit of leveraging another API gateway allows us, because we are using quite a bit of SnapLogic for our APIs, but we are able to connect ones that have already been built or even other solutions. So that way we can have them coming under a single umbrella. So it gives us that layer of abstraction. And they all, from a consumer standpoint, I mean, a developer consumer, it looks like Marco. And then later on, if we decide we're going to change the implementation, the API really would just be exactly the same.
Yeah, let me comment on that even further, if I may. And that was a question from Sudhakar, so we really appreciate that question. Yeah, as Brian explained, over the last 12 months, well, actually over the last eight months or so, we've announced some new capabilities on our API development side of things, and we'll continue, by the way, to announce capabilities on our API side of things, particularly on the management. And so just to sort of fill in the blanks of what Brian is saying is that our environment, for those of you who may be unfamiliar with SnapLogic, we have a GUI-based designer approach. So instead of writing out your API scripts, you would build a pipeline through our visual designer. We give you over 500 connectors to do this sort of thing, and those connectors could be various endpoints. It might actually be a built-in REST sort of API, maybe even SOAP API. But the point is, it's like a Lego approach where you put together these connectors to build what we refer to then as a pipeline. And that pipeline, by the way, you'll be able to validate the pipeline itself to make sure the integrity is good. You can in fact preview data. And you can all do all of this within the SnapLogic designer environment. So once that pipeline is built, you may choose to actually expose the APIs for that pipeline, say to have that API to be accessible from a URL. So therefore, if you wanted to put some sort of call script into your application to call this API or this pipeline, which would then expose the API, that is where we provide that capability. So all in the same motion, so to speak, within the same platform, allowing you to manage your APIs. And just as Brian mentioned, if you have an API gateway on the side, we'll have the ability to coexist with that API gateway, because obviously every company is different. Their implementations will look different. Some will exclusively run APIs on SnapLogic. Others will probably integrate with some existing solution, but we certainly give you the power to make that choice.
Yeah, we actually have a few examples where we were able to take a SOAP endpoint from another system and turn that into a RESTful interface, because right or wrong, SOAP is a little dated and a little bloated, and not everybody is well versed on how to leverage those. So we have a master data management system right now that, how you communicate to that, it's all via SOAP API calls, and we've turned those into RESTful calls. So that way, as developers interact with that, they don't have to navigate through all the SOAP messages and so on. Even commercial products like Ariba from SAP, they're all SOAP API calls, and there's a variety of different ways you have to integrate with those. So again, from an abstraction and simplifying. So to me, it's about speed, agility, and smarts, right? So don't do things where you're going to combine multiple systems in a single API. Try to keep it. I like to say microservices, but they're really like mini services. But don't create these macro services where you're trying to get like multiple things at the same time, because you'll get yourself in trouble really quickly.
Yeah, and just to support that point, I couldn't agree more. One of the things we're particularly very proud about in our platform is because all the different tooling that you can achieve in managing your data. Maybe you'll do a classic architecture where you're moving the data to an analytics backend. Maybe it's just a matter of connecting some operational applications, or perhaps, in fact, Brian had mentioned machine learning early being almost commodity. Maybe, Brian, knowing a little bit about your background, you might want to elaborate on the wonderful things you're doing on machine learning. But the point I wanted to make was some tooling that we provide in SnapLogic to prep your data for your machine learning type models. So if you find that you're burdening yourself using different tools to just prep your data to build those models, you might want to, again, investigate the SnapLogic platform for some of the built-in tooling that we provide to maybe help that effort, because the more we can allow you to achieve in integrating your data on one platform, we think that the better it is from a consolidation perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you the flexibility. For another example is more of a reactive type of integration as you start to, if IoT's sensors are in your wheelhouse, or if your company's looking to see how you can leverage that, we were able to quickly implement an IoT strategy where the device data is streaming in, and then we have multiple paths. We have a cold path that goes to more of an analytical domain where people can visualize, in our cases, washrooms, conference rooms, also getting feedback from consumers if the washroom needs to be clean. And then we have a hot path for sending out notifications. And basically, we've been able to connect to that hub via SnapLogic as a consumer, so that as that data is streaming in, we're able to send it off to the next system in an appropriate way, and we're able to do simple transformations along the way. So it just gives you that flexibility and freedom to be innovative, and then you're not necessarily always trying to build out infrastructure to solve a problem.
Great point. Great point.
Thanks. There's another question to you, Brian. As you were building Marco out, were the business users involved through the process? And if so, how are their requests or demands being added into Marco over time?
Yeah, good question. Good question. Actually, because we have such a diverse and distributed field, we learned early on as we were building out some of the operational applications, getting out in the field, and actually we've taken video and surveyed operators. So we have a team that actually goes out and talks to the operators and really try to understand where their pain points are throughout the day, because as we've done it, like most companies, we think of these systems and we think, oh, wow, this is the next best thing, and let's roll it out. But we don't really always think about the burden we're putting on the operators. Mm-hmm. And we like to talk about a term of swivel chair automation. So in order to be able to see sales and other operational pieces, they're going from one terminal to the other. And as we have observed those are the types of systems or functions that we focused on first. And again, being able to provide that information in a way that's easy for them to consume, and not just one way. So you have to think about an omni-channel consumption engine, right? So it can be an app. It could be in an app they're already using today. It could be text messages. It could be a chatbot. So and each one is in its own use case. It's just different ways of interacting with those consumers and being able to engage with not just consumers or operators in the way that they need to be able to consume the information. So the other thing, too, we did recently is, as I said, a lot of companies have analytic teams that build out reports and dashboards. And in a lot of cases, your business users don't always know where all those reports are, or how to get it, and what information is available to it, and what information. So what we've also done, again, from a communication standpoint, we took the same concept that we did for the developer portal, but we've created an internal portal that our business users can go and access and query and be able to see what reports information is available to them. And that's beneficial because now they're not always coming and asking us for a new report. We're able to leverage existing assets, possibly retire assets, or enhance existing ones because it may have serviced some need a few years back, but the need's different. So this way we get the continuous quality improvement along with the process, and it lets them engage with us in an easy way, and we're just not building things and then just seeing if they use it or not.
Thanks. There's another question that came in for Charlie. So in your research, the two research that you've made, do the size matter of the size of the company matter and differ in terms of how they approach in data analytics?
So yeah, I mean, well, I did briefly mention on one of the slides earlier on something to do with size, but I mean, yeah, it's definitely an area where this entire conversation today is going to kind of scale up and down based on size. Obviously, as I mentioned, you're going to have greater volumes of data being managed. So kind of thinking of larger organizations, greater volume of data being managed, more likelihood of having a whole host of different distinct sources of data, different kind of deployments for those different sources of data. Your data management processes are going to be spread out across a whole host of different locations. So yeah, I think as you scale up, there is this greater challenge probably presented for organizations. As I mentioned, there's the number of sources. Another data point that I did mention earlier on, which there's a pretty clear size trend in relation to, is the disconnected data sources. So when we started looking at the largest organizations that we interviewed, they were much more likely to say, yes, the disconnected data sources, that's the reason that we have these kind of trust issues and confidence issues. So I think, I mean, generally speaking, as you move up the size, as you've got more employees that you're kind of trying to work with and trying to accommodate with regards to all of this conversation, yeah, there's certainly more kind of need for the various things that we've talked about. And I think obviously one of the things that we've talked about a lot is the automation element, and that certainly is going to become even more crucial the bigger the organizations that we're talking about here.
Got it. All right. So before we wrap up, there is one last question, and that's for you, Brian. So in terms of creating that internal portal for users to query their own data and create their own reports, is there specific best practices in how to, give access to users, or does everyone in the organization have access to it?
So for the internal portal, the whole Aramark organization has access to that. For the external portal, you can go to that. You can actually Google Aramark Marco, and it will come up. And that's a developer portal. It allows you to browse just much like any other technology company, what APIs are available. But in order to use them, you have to register. So there's a whole process to go through that. And then we also have externally facing services, and we have internally facing services. So we also provision data back to our customers. So our customers also have analytic teams, and especially in the sporting environment, and they want to consume their data too. So we provide access to that, but then we provide it in a secure way, and then that way we go through a process of understanding what information they have, what venues they're at, and that way we're not publishing information that somebody else should not be seeing.
I see. Great, thank you. Michael, any last thoughts or, last thoughts before we wrap up?
No, this is great. We appreciate everyone dialing in, and then I'm looking at how everyone is stuck around towards the end. That's just amazing, and it demonstrates that this is a topic a lot of you are interested in, and we trust that you found the information valuable. Maybe we'll make one last pitch. If there's a question you're just burning to get out and you want to ask it, throw it in the chat box. We'll include it. Otherwise, we're really grateful for all of you to join us today. Thank you for your time. And we hope that we were able to address your technical questions and And check us out. Check out what we're doing at SnapLogic. We're available to answer your question through other methods as well after this call.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, Brian. Thank you, Charlie, for joining us in this panel. And thank you for the audience who joined us and sticking around for the entire panel. So as I mentioned, there are 2 reports that we have available for you. And if you want to try SnapLogic, we do have a free trial that you can sign up for a 30-day trial. Thank you so much and have a great day. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.